Thanks, Claire. So the hardest part for me right off the bat is they told me I have to stay behind the podium, which is not my normal way of doing things. I normally like to walk around a lot. I like to get up in the audience. I'm going to bend the rules a little bit. I'm going to go beside the podium. I'm not much of a behind the podium kind of guy, so this is the best I can do. So before I even start, I already have a question I have to answer. So I was kind of in the back of the room there enjoying some donut holes, and Mayor Gillum came up and said, "What made you ever get into this?" And I promised him I'd answer it once the camera was on. So I can be a politician too, right? So the question is, so what made you get into this? So Claire mentioned I grew up here. I was an Eagle Scout, so we did a lot of Boy Scouting activities across the basin. And most people, I don't think, most people can point to the time when they go, yep, that's what I want to do. And I kind of can. So we were at a Boy Scout outing in the Saugeen River Watershed. And they had basically a watershed council. The provincial watershed council was in the area. And they had set up some demonstration tables, sand tables of water and sediment moving. And they were basically having rivers interact on this table in the middle of the woods, and kind of explaining how watersheds work. I said, well, that's great. I love it. I thought it was really cool. I've always been fascinated with rivers, canoeing, camping, fishing, being outside. And so I started looking into what that was. And at first it was like, well, this is forestry, it's natural resources. I'm like, oh, I guess I want to be a park ranger. Then I found out park rangers don't pay anything. And that didn't seem like a good career plan, right? I was like, all right, well, I love being outside. I love dealing with water. But, being a park ranger didn't quite seem like it was what I wanted to do. And then I had a father who managed to be a professor for 50 years. So that seemed like a decent opportunity. So I'm like, well, if he can do it that long, maybe I can give it a shot too. So I've been a professor now. If you actually count the time, I was actually at Jackson Community College before going to Lawrence Technological University. So I've been a professor almost 20 years now, 18 years, which is 30 years shorter than my father, who is now 48 or 49 this year. 49. Okay, so he's 49 years as a professor. I'm at 18. There is no way I'm doing this for 48 years. Not going to happen. So that's kind of a little bit of the quick background. Now, the reason you guys really came here is to talk a little bit about sustainable landscapes for watershed management. And I put the local perspective in there because that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a local perspective, right? And so why manage rainwater? Why should we even care? Okay? And we're going to kind of work your way through it, but you probably already know the answer, right? So the reason we need to manage rainwater is if you look back historically, that, this was meadows, it was fields, it was forest, it was, managed by the Aboriginal people, but it had a really good kind of natural hydrology. The other thing that's fascinating about Michigan and the Great Lakes, right, is I can tell you how old every river is, right? Less than 10,000 years. So because of the glaciers, we have a very, very unique hydrologic system here. And the Great Lakes themselves is a one-time gift. Okay, if you think of it any other way, the Great Lakes is a one-time gift from the glaciers. If we don't take care of that one-time gift, we're never getting it back. Okay? Go to Colorado, go to Arizona, go to Texas, and ask them about water, and you're going to hear a very, very different answer than what we hear about here. So the problem with that one-time gift, you probably want to go the other direction. So they're talking about brain food over there. And we're talking, they got way better snacks. They got all healthy. So I went over there, and they got all healthy snacks, right? We got donut holes and cookies. So, yeah, and the token apple. Anyone who goes to fall cider mills, right? You take your kids there, you have a whole bunch of donuts, and you make them eat like 2 bites out of an apple just so you feel good about it. So going back to the development, right? So one of the problems we have had historically is because we have so much water and access to water, we haven't had like this ethos of stewardship, believe it or not, right? It's cheap, it's plentiful, it's easy. I can turn on my tap and a gallon of water costs me a penny, right? And so because of that, I think it shaped how we kind of dealt with water for a long time. And we're kind of starting to wake up now, okay? And we're waking up because of things like August 15th, 2014, like the algae bloom in Lake Erie that shut down Toledo, all right? Go to Flint right now and ask them about water, okay? We're starting to realize that we haven't really dealt with water the way we need to, and it's really kind of shaking people up and waking them up to issues. So going back to what this slide is actually showing, right, is you had this historical watershed that was really in balance with nature going back to the glaciers. We came in and we put in the Lodge Freeway and we put in a bunch of gold buildings, and lo and behold, things flood and we wonder why. Okay? Well, that's because when we passed the Clean Water Act in the early 1970s, that was focused on point source pollution, industrial pollution. And we've done a great job of handling industrial pollution. Okay? But up until even the 90s, we could build buildings and not do anything with our stormwater. Okay? So now all of a sudden you've got all this development that did nothing to deal with the water that came out of the sky, and that's why we have a lot of these issues. All right? And so this is the kind of basic hydrologic cycle. Let me tell you two things I know about the hydrologic cycle. One is that every kid learned about the hydrologic cycle from kindergarten to 8th grade. Okay? Every single year. My 12-year-old daughter, my 14-year-old son can tell you all about the hydrologic cycle. By the time they graduate high school, they have forgotten the hydrologic cycle. That's the other thing I know about this cycle, right? You learn it and you forget it. But in a nutshell, what it says is when we have rain, okay, at least 50% of that water is supposed to go in the ground. At least. Okay? Evapotranspiration, that's a fancy way of saying evaporation and transpiration, or breathing water back into the atmosphere. When we pave everything over, and we have what we call impervious surface, which is concrete, asphalt, everything, buildings. Now instead of 50% coming off the landform or going into the land, now 50, 60, 70% run straight off it. Okay? So we flip things on its head, right? And it gets worse than that. So now, all of a sudden, all this water is coming off of that land, and the question is, well, what's in that water, right? A lot of excess sediment, okay? If you go look at, right now, Traverse City and Acme, Michigan are actually basically having a legal battle with Myers because in their construction, they didn't cover anything up, had a big rainstorm, and all that sediment washed right into the bay. So there's a lot of excess sediment in stormwater, in urban runoff. Lots of nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen. We just started a phosphorus, a lot of states are going to a phosphorus ban or a low P ban. There's a lot of nutrients. Heavy metals. Do you know that if I took a cup, like Claire wants you to recycle back there, and I scooped that into a catch basin or one of the stormwater structures we have out here, I would find arsenic, mercury, lead, zinc. Okay? Stormwater is effectively a known carcinogen because of all the stuff that's in there. Pesticides, herbicides, right? Bacteria, pathogens. That one, that's a really polite way of me saying goose poop. All right? There's a lot of geese, And this is one of those things, so I'm going to digress a lot. A, because that's what I do, and B, because I have the microphone, I'm allowed to. So one of the reasons I'm going to digress is Canadian geese. I'll start with Canadian geese, right? So as it's been mentioned, I was a Boy Scout. I love the fall. Because the Canadian geese, you get these giant V's of Canadian geese flying south for the winter. How many of those do you see anymore? Really, think about it. How many times do you see flocks of Canadian geese heading south anymore? They don't. They don't head south anymore. My local heckler just walked in, by the way. So Professor Toko is also a Huntington Woods resident and also teaches with me at Lawrence Tech. But he's a construction guy. That's why he's my local heckler. So let's talk about those geese for a minute. All right? So here's what I know about geese. What I know about geese is that flying south for the winter is a learned behavior. Okay? If their parents don't fly south for the winter, the children will not fly south for the winter. It's not something that's ingrained in them. It's something that's a learned behavior. All of the giant stormwater ponds that we've created in our landscape that we then aerate so that they don't necessarily freeze, and that all that turf grass we've nice and made lush around it, we've created the perfect geese habitat. They have food, they have no predators, they have access to water, they're not going anywhere, okay? And they poop literally pounds a day. Pounds a day. They have one of the most inefficient digestive systems of all birds. And that's actually not a joke, right? It takes literally like a minute for beak to butt. So they are horrible, and that is one of the issues we have. is because of the way we're dealing modern day stormwater ponds, we've created this habitat that geese don't want to leave. And so now we have a big goose problem. Hydrocarbons, oils, gas, grease, you want to know anything about that? Go behind McDonald's after a rainstorm. You'll know all about that. There's a lot of nice purples and yellows and oranges, right? My daughter wants the tie-dye t-shirts. I tell her, after a rainstorm, just go to McDonald's and dip it in a puddle and you got a tie-dye t-shirt. You don't have to worry about it. So what's the value of rain? Okay, so now I'm talking about what's got us in here. So why should we care about rain? I already talked about our tap water's cheap. You know, I mean, even though it's people are complaining about their rates going up 15, 20%, you're still literally paying pennies on the gallon. In the grand scheme of things, you spend a lot more money at the 7-Eleven taking a jug of water off the shelf. So why do we need to value rain? Well, it's naturally filtered, right? There's actually less dissolved solids in it. It's soft. Doesn't have magnesium or calcium. We spend water softeners to treat the water that's coming into our house. Rain is naturally soft. It's a natural fertilizer. When it goes through atmospheric deposition, it picks up actually sulfur and nitrogen in the air. So if you're watering your plants with rainwater, you don't need to have a whole bunch of excess fertilizer. There's no salt, no chlorine. Water from plants, or watering plants from rain, are going to grow faster than if you use your tap water, and it's free. So, every time now you sit there and go, wow, DWSD or now the Great Lakes Water Authority, they just jacked up my rates another 15, 20, 25%. Eventually you're going to say, you know what, I don't really want to water my plants with potable water anymore. I'm going to start doing this. All right, so what are the benefits? What are we going to do? What are the benefits of rainwater management? Well, one is to support wildlife and native ecosystems. We're going to come back and talk about that a little bit more. Saves energy and money, okay? Energy and water basically go hand in hand. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to treat water to drinking standards. Then we flush it, and it takes a more tremendous amount of energy to treat it before we can discharge it. Okay? So, let's treat a water used. It decreases erosion and stream degradation. It's kind of a fancy way of saying that if we manage rainwater management, our streams will be healthier. Not like the Rouge River and things like that, in that nature. It's going to reduce seasonal floods in urban areas. We're going to come back to that a little bit. It's going to help recharge groundwater. Again, go out west, and you're going to have a very, very different conversation. Minimizes air pollution. Okay. All these things are why you should manage rainwater. Okay? So, water volume, the things that are in our pipes, are really a function of only three things. It's a function of rain, land use, and soil. The easiest equation you can and get a PhD to figure that out. But it's the easiest equation in the world. All right, so rain. Let's first talk about rain. I did not lie. I only had one equation. What this is showing you is this is frequency of rainfall events. 76% of all rainfall events are less than 1 inch. So when it starts raining and when it stops raining, 1 inch. Okay? It's only a very tiny fraction of the time that we get more than 4 inches of rain. Very, very small. Okay? Look at this, what this is saying. This is Southeast Michigan, so this is Detroit. What this says is, once a year, on average, we will get 1.87 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. Okay? So, what we call a 100-year event, a 100-year event, that's 696. That's a basement in Royal Oak. So what happened on August 11th, 2014? Depending upon where you were, you got between 3 inches of three 6 inches of rain. If you got a 6-inch storm event, that statistically speaking should happen once every 250 years. Most pipes are sized for about a 10-year event and what we would call a 1 year or 1 hour storm, which is basically that first burst of water. One to 2 inches of rain. That's how big the pipe is sized for, right? Well, that 6-inch rainstorm we had, that didn't happen in 24 hours. Remember, the pipes can only handle 2 inches. They got 6. So it's even worse when you look at the pipes. Okay? Blame the politicians for a lot of things. You can't buy, I got a whole bunch of people doing this.
2,400 basements.
Yeah, there you go. You got it right. Based on data published up to 1992. Okay, and I try not to get too engineering with audiences, but I think this one. Greater frequency, higher intensity, higher volume. Okay? Climate change, I don't care what you want to call it. Call it climate change, call it whatever you want to call it. Tenth of an acre lots, small lots, high impervious surface. So, again, not an equation, just a table. If I get 2 inches of rain, okay, so pop quiz, what percentage of rainfall events are 2 inches or less? I have an asphalt surface or a rooftop, 1.8 inches of that water is going to run off. So, okay. Eighth of an acre lots. Okay? Eighth acre lots. Now, this last part here, A, B, C, D, that's called hydrologic soil group. I'm going to talk about that in a second. On clay soils. If we get 2 inches of rain coming out of the sky, 1.3 inches of that is going to run off into the So the last thing is soil. That's the third part of the equation is soil. there are 4 types of soils, very generically speaking, right? A is sand, D is clay, silt and loam are kind of in between. But this is more or less telling you that if you have good type A soils, sandy soils, you're going to get at least minimum 2 inches. That's like A soils, B soils, and there's your D soil. Oop. There's your D soil. Tight, dense, dark clay. Okay. Okay. So here's the other thing we're looking at. Okay, how do you get to the D soils to behave more like A soils? And there is ways to do that. What we can do is promote green infrastructure. Okay? So green infrastructure, you can read that. I'm not going to read it to you. That's the United States EPA's definition of green infrastructure. The way I like to operationalize green infrastructure has no idea that we're living there. That's the gold standard. Okay? The stream create healthier environments because it can be done. Okay? This is a school in Southfield, right? This used to be turf grass on diesel. Rain gardens, planter boxes, native landscaping, permeable pavements, vegetated roofs and walls, cisterns, water harvesting, reuse. What is the difference between a bioretention cell and a rain garden? John knows the answer to this because he's heard me tell this joke before. Be here today. Lillian Dean, many of you know her. She is the rain garden guru. I've known Lillian for quite a while. She is a Huntington Woods resident. These are the street to take road runoff so it doesn't come down into your driveway because, again, this is really flat. Or you can have it against your house to get your downspout water. Ann Arbor, Michigan has a very progressive rain garden program. So this is a front yard rain garden, right? You got the downspout coming in. This is the extreme Ann Arbor, right? So here is crushed stone driveway that used to be asphalt, porous pavement. Bioretention cells. So this is Macomb County Municipal Building. So here you got water sheet flowing off, catching in an edge drain, filling this whole thing up, then spilling over into an overflow system. One of the things that Portland had a pretty good plan on for a while, this corner used to be asphalt. If you get an area that's asphalt, that's maybe striped in yellow because you don't and then this is, I like this one a lot. This is New York City right there. So this is their rain garden, right? They got a little Green Street sign, no dogs allowed, no dog pooping, because otherwise this would be have. Basically, these are it's what you think of. It's a landscape planter box, right? And in that landscape planter box, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 foot of soil sometimes that you planter boxes that open up and just go straight into the soil, or if you're worried about flooding a basement or if it's too close to your building and you don't have good watershed protection, you fit at a school. Here's an example of a retrofit off of a housing unit. This is actually on the second story of a housing unit. Right? Here's some planter boxes in urban areas. That's a planter box. Water gets through these tiny little openings. It sheet flows in and comes in these offers. This is a planter. I call these the Michigan Avenue rain gardens. If you've ever been up to Michigan Avenue, that's our capital right there, right? Where this picture is, if you turn out, dug down, they put in stone to start with, then they backfilled with basically engineered soil. Well, that's a piano bar. And they decided that that was probably a little risky for these, you know, kids to come out at 2 in the morning and just do a face plant into these little rain. No, it's helping. The Lansing as whole have done enough that they're actually seeing improvements in the river. So. I know it's hard to see back there, but I'll point out for you. This is 1 inch. Okay, so daylilies. Sorry, this is 1 foot. Daylilies. Daylilies have a root system that goes down about a foot. Okay, perennial fountain. Okay, about an inch or two. So one of the problems with, again, mowing your lawn is more or less you'll have about half the root mass buffalo grass, which is about not much taller than fescue, has 8 feet of roots. Okay, that's a black-eyed Susan. Black-eyed Susan, 6 feet of roots. Prairie dropseed, 8 feet of roots. These porous structures and get down beneath. So when it's drought time, they reach down here and they grab the water. When it's wet time, they take the water and they. That's Millennial Park in downtown Chicago. So they took this massive area and basically made it a. Wayne County's got a very aggressive grow zone program. So it's where they took turf grass and put in native plant species. The thing that's great. That's our native grow zone at Lawrence Tech. So this used to be turf grass. It used to. Important. I know we don't have any natural rivers around here, but one of the most important things, this is what we call a buffer zone. Taking and not mowing right to the edge. So back 10, 20, 30 feet so your streams are healthier. And this is a big part of what I'm doing in a lot of communities on the Clinton River is getting them to can take your lots and turn them back into functioning like meadows. Okay. All right, so moving on, maybe. A particular schematic is a lot of practices, a lot of landscaping practices had to do things like mounding up trees and putting on a lot of mulch and directing. There's a variety of ways you can do that. One of the things that I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't want water running across my front yard. That's fine. You can have water go to your downspout, go into a So permeable pavement are things like porous concrete, pavers, permeable paver systems. No matter what the top is, they all have about the same. Permeable asphalt. This is a permeable asphalt parking lot in Farmington Hills. This is a regular asphalt driveway, permeable asphalt parking stalls. This is a permeable asphalt street in Philadelphia. Here's your same concept. That's a good picture of it right there. So the drawback, the biggest thing on the porous part is you see here. This is just the parking stalls. This is literally half a parking stall. This stuff is really. So cars, normal operations in a parking lot, just fine. But that's why even in parking lots, we tend to do regular most places and just do porous concrete driveway. Here's a porous concrete driveway and a porous concrete sidewalk. Just another demonstration that concrete. A couple other examples. These are actually reinforced plastic systems here, reinforced plastic parking lot. You basically, this plastic system, it's almost like an egg carton. So that's a parking lot. So it's got grass growing on it. It's got a tree coming through it. Nothing's running off of that. Right? It can be concrete pavers. So those are plastic systems. That's a concrete system. Either chip stone or grass, right? Pavers, brick pavers, you know, there's a lot of different techniques out there. They all more or less do the same thing, get water into the ground. There's a great publication, SEMCOG, Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. They put out the Great Lakes Green Streets Guidebook. There's like 27 examples in here. The thing that's really nice about this book is alleys. This is, anybody know where this is? Right by the Green Garage. Although I like to say it's right next to the Motor City Brewing Company. Anyway, so another Hunter Woods kid. So you can see the concrete pavers here, recycled brick there, native plants everywhere. So when you when you aggressive green alleys program, because alleys in Detroit or Chicago or any big city, huge contributor to stormwater pollution. So there's a really aggressive green alley program in Chicago. Green roofs, the Ford Motor Company plant, when that green roof opened in 2003, not positive. That was the world's largest green roof, vegetated roof. It's now number 8. So there's 7 bigger than it now. That's Chicago City Hall. That's a very, very famous green roof as well. First. This is Crystal Lake. That's a little goat. That's a vegetated roof. So a friend of mine who's got a little shop up in Traverse City designed and built this one. So that's a little goat on top of this man's vegetated roof on his. This is a cottage up in Crystal near Frankfurt area. Okay, that's a merry-go-round. That's a vegetated roof over a merry-go-round in a park, and that's a doghouse. Types of green roofs. I'm wrapping up here pretty soon. There's extensive and intensive. An extensive green roof is a large green roof. Big time public spaces, lots of things happening. Extensive green roofs are things like that. Okay, so this is actually a project I worked on. SC4 is St. Clair County Community College. Program to retrofit their building roofs with green roofs. So these are both retrofits. Woodhaven Brownstone is another project I've worked on. That's effectively has a layer of vegetation, and it's got a layer of root barrier so that the roots don't go into the building. You have a nice roofing membrane, and then you've got this kind of this egg carton layer that holds water. As far as the vegetation goes, you can have all sorts of different types of vegetation, right? You can have flowering vegetation. You can have, all. Extensive roofs only take about 1 to 5 inches of soil depth. Okay. Mostly sedum, some grasses. They add between 12 and 50 pounds of weight per square foot, depending upon how deep you get on your system. All right. In about 7 years. Depending upon the system, it may be 10-year return on investment, right? They last twice as long. Is basically take that green roof, put it on its side. Same kind of benefit. You can trickle stormwater through this. You shade your buildings. You get a lot of energy. Not as much as a green roof, but you do get some energy savings from this. They can be harvesting. That's our 12,000 gallon cistern at Lawrence Tech. It's underground. We use that to flush toilets, recycle water back in the building. That's at the Kresge Foundation. That's their very large system. Fairlane. These I have a new slide I have to add. I was just driving here today, and there's a house on Nadine that has 2 rain barrels on the roof. Is that your house? No. Oh, so I know the neighbor. The neighbor. String these things together. Have one at every downspout. Tie them together. This is a project in Detroit. But 1 rain barrel is better than no rain barrels, but literally 55 gallons. fills up like that. So we got Royal Oak right here, Ferndale. Unfortunately, Huntington Woods is too small to label, but not my fault. This is the Rouge River Watershed. But yeah, that's Huntington Woods. That's Pleasant Ridge. So you can feel better. Pleasant Ridge. Blue things out here on the edges. What are all these little blue things? Creeks and streams, right? Where are they? There aren't any streams in Detroit. I'm not going to tell you much about Lawrence Tech, except that you're all invited to come over and walk around. We have a 120-acre campus, about 4,000 students in 4 colleges. The rail, these are basically all different ways of dealing with water on our campus. We have rain gardens, bioswales, porous pavers, green roofs, cisterns, bioswales. Signage that talks about the Rouge River watershed, how you can protect it. Trust me, the Clinton River watershed works the same way. You know, these our signage. The signage talks about what you're looking at. It's got artist renderings, the benefits, the design features, the types of plants that are there. So that's our vegetated roof. It's an extensive roof, which means you're not allowed up on it. So now you're standing down here going, I wonder what's on top of that building. So we have signs. We also have QR codes. And a QR code is basically you take your smartphone, you scan that code, and guess what you get to see? You take out your smartphone, you can watch me. You can watch me give a rain garden presentation, a green. You can see all these presentations. So it's too far of a drive for you. All that construction on 10 miles sucks. So we also have the whole thing digitally. So you can actually go to our website. You can click on any of these pins, and the sign comes up, information comes up, and the video will come up. So